Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So this is like quite a deep personal video for me because I feel like usually I just do like hauls, but I do get a lot of questions, usually over on TikTok, whenever I mention the word endometriosis, because I feel like a lot of people either don't know about it or they're just learning about it now, and so many people have it, so many women have it, so it's kind of like a lot of people do want to know about it. Also, I'm very aware I literally look so bad right now. But yeah, I'm filming this on my lunch break just because I just wanted to get this video out, and I feel like I've got like a rough idea of how I'm going to go through things. I've wrote it down on a little post-it note because I want this video to be quite like organised and like well done. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about my experience and explain what it is, and just yeah, my experience. I'm going to talk about surgery and just like my like tips and things that help me. Okay, I've just changed my hair. I don't know if that's better or worse, but honestly I just do not feel good today, but we're just keep coming and we're not going to let that bother us. So basically I'm going to start just by saying like quickly what endometriosis actually is, because I know a lot of people have not heard of it, or they've heard the word and they just don't know what it means. So basically endometriosis is a condition. It affects, I think it's 1 in 10 women, and it's basically where tissue that should be in the lining of the womb starts growing like elsewhere in the body. So it can literally be found, I saw a list the other day of like everywhere that it can be found, and it can be found in like really like random places. Like it's most commonly found in like the bladder, the bowel. Basically it's usually commonly found like in that region, but it can be found literally anywhere, like literally anywhere in your lungs, your brain, things like that. It's a lot less common to be found there, but it is possible. So yeah, it basically the way this is not coming across great, the way it's described is usually when you have a period, you release that like tissue that's in your womb, like the lining of your womb, the tissue that is then released every time you have a period. But with this tissue, because it's outside of your womb, you can never release it, so it builds up and builds up, and causes like all kinds of problems. So yeah, it basically builds up and then you become like inflamed and like basically like blocked. That's the way I kind of think of it. Like you become blocked, so like it starts affecting like all of your organs because they just can't like work as like well and as smoothly and as quickly as they usually can, because they're just having to like almost like work twice as hard because they're blocked. That's the way I kind of like imagine it in my brain. Yes, that's basically what it is. What it can affect is it basically means that you have really, really painful periods, not just periods, but like any time of the month. Like I personally, I would say I don't suffer as much on my period as anymore. I used to, definitely, and I'll get into that. But I just suffer like most days, like with my symptoms. So yeah, it basically makes you have like painful periods, painful ovulation, pain just all around. Honestly, like there's so many things it affects. It can also affect fertility. It's just, honestly, the amount of like, if you Google like all the symptoms and all of the like things it can affect, it literally blows your mind. That basically leads me on to like symptoms, and I'll talk about my symptoms and then I'll talk about like general symptoms. So usually like the biggest kind of like symptom that they say is like irregular periods. So either irregular or like really, really heavy periods, or just, yeah, periods that don't follow a pattern. Now, I never ever had a pattern with my periods. When I got my period, I think I was 11, and I literally never ever had a pattern. I remember everyone saying to me like, you will find a pattern. You've got to like write down in your diary every time. And I just did that for years, and there was never ever a pattern. Like it just came at the most random times ever. It like was so heavy, so painful. I missed days of school. I felt like I couldn't function on my period, which I know that is the case for a lot of people. But the thing is, that's not normal. Like you're not meant to feel like that on your period. You're meant to be able to like, yeah, obviously your period is it's not gonna be great no matter what, and you know, you're gonna get cramps and you're gonna get a bit uncomfortable, but it should never stop you from going to work, going to school. Like it shouldn't stop your life. It should not be that painful. But yeah, mine was just ridiculously painful. Like painkillers would do nothing. Like it was just really, really hard. So I'd say that's like the main symptom. Then another symptom that I definitely got as well was like being bloated all the time. Now I never had this when I was younger, but when I got to about 19, I would say 19, 20, I just started to get so bloated to the point where I would literally look pregnant. Like people used to literally say to me like, are you pregnant? And that in itself is like a whole different mind game. Like, and I can imagine that's so much worse as well if you're trying to get pregnant and people say, oh, are you pregnant? And you know that you're trying to get pregnant but you're struggling, and you know it's not that, it's your endometriosis, which is probably also making you struggle to have a baby. So it's just honestly like, that's the other things, like the mental and emotional side of things is just like, it's a whole different mind game. It's like going through like puberty, menopause, like constantly, like your hormonal changes they're just constant. There is honestly so many different symptoms. Like I could sit here for ages and say all the symptoms. You have to Google them because there is so many, like so many little things that you think that's weird, like, and then you Google it and it's like, oh, that's also a symptom. Like I personally, at the moment, I feel like my symptoms do go through like stages. Like at the moment, I've not been getting really bad cramps, whereas a few months ago, I was literally like, around Christmas time, I was having cramps so bad it would literally make me fall to the floor. And I know that sounds a bit like what, but it would literally, like, the way I see it is like when I've seen like birth vlogs and like seen people like have contractions, that is like what it is like. You literally, it comes out of nowhere and it literally makes me clench over. Like I've literally fallen over countless times because it's just come on so suddenly, and the pain is just like, it just feels like you're being electrocuted inside. Like it's so different to period cramps, and that's the way I describe it. Is like, period cramps for me anyway, obviously this is all just my own experience, period cramps for me are just kind of like a constant like dull kind of aching soreness. Like they're not really like sudden and sharp, like feeling like you're getting electrocuted kind of pain. Like whereas endo is like that, it's like literally out of nowhere you could be fine and then out of nowhere you can get a cramp, and it just like, that's what scares me the most, is you can't prepare for it. Like with a period, it's like, you know, you're on your period, you know, like, well, I should probably take it easy, maybe I should take a painkiller if I know I'm going out, and like if you know you're going to go for a drive, maybe take a painkiller if you know you get really bad cramps. You can't do that for endo because it can be like any time in the month, at least in my experience it can be like, and it can come out of nowhere. So like that side of things really scares me. Like I've had situations where I've nearly crashed my car because I've got a cramp so intense and out of nowhere. Like it is actually scary. But yeah, I think what I was saying is my symptom at the moment that I've really been struggling with is migraines. And again, I think that's to do with like hormonal changes. I know that like when you're, I can't remember what hormone it is, it might be estrogen, but I think when that's like higher is usually when your endo symptoms are like flared, if that makes sense, which I think is why you suffer more with endo when you're like on your period or like ovulating, because that's when your like hormone levels are like higher, if that makes sense. Which is why and again I'll get onto this further, but which is why doctors recommend contraception all the time, like birth control, because that can like adjust your hormones. And like if you have no estrogen in your body, or you have less estrogen in your body, then it can ease some of your symptoms of endo. Okay, so that leads me on to my like journey with it. So like I said, I got my period when I was 11 years old, and I struggled for years trying to find a pattern for it. It wasn't until I think I waited until I was like 14, 15, and I just had there was no pattern for it. And so I went to the doctors about it, and they were like, right, you should go on the pill, like you should go on birth control pill. And I was like, right, okay. Obviously I didn't know much about it at that point, but that's what I did. I went on the pill. I think it was microgynon was the first pill I went on, and I was on that pill for like, since I was about 15 to about 19, 18, 19. I was on it for a good few years, and in that time it was actually great. Like everything was fine. Like because obviously you take the pill and then you stop taking the pill for a week, or at least that when you do, then you get your period in that week. I knew when my period was coming constantly, so it was like such a relief to like not have to worry about when it's going to come. So that side of it was fine. Like I was still getting really painful periods, but I kind of just like accepted that like that was the case. Like I didn't know anything about endometriosis back then. Like no doctor ever said that to me. No one in my family or friends knew about it. So like I just assumed that like that was what periods were. They just were meant to be like excruciating. And I just kind of like accepted that at least now I know when they're coming and I can prepare for them. So I was on that for like 4 or 5 years, and like I said, everything was pretty much like as expected. And then it was like all of a sudden like it just switched. Like all of a sudden it just stopped working. And obviously that probably is because like I got to like 18, 19, and obviously I was having like hormonal changes, and like you kind of go through like another little puberty, I feel like, at that age as a woman. I feel like you actually do. So I think it's like all those hormones were then changing, and it was basically meaning that the pill wasn't working for me anymore. Like I started getting all those symptoms and side effects of endometriosis, and at the time, like I said, I didn't know what it was, so I was really like, what is going on? And it was actually quite a scary time, because all of a sudden I just had all these symptoms like all at once. Like all of a sudden, like I said, my stomach was like bloated to the point of looking pregnant. I was basically I was bleeding for like 100 days consistently. Like there was no end to it. And I remember thinking at first, like, this is really weird. Like, why am I... Oh, I forgot to mention that because it stopped working, I did come off it at this point. And then I've been off it for a few months, I think. And then this is when all the bleeding happened. And yeah, I waited until it'd been like a few weeks and was like, no, this isn't normal. And yeah, it ended up being like, what's that? It was like over 3-4 months. And it was just a very weird time, considering I was also getting like all the other sort of symptoms and side effects of endo as well. And it wasn't until I went to the doctors that time that they actually said like it might be that. And I'd also done my own research by that point and I knew about it. And that is the thing, like, because it's so difficult to get a diagnosis, like I think it's like average 7 years to even get a diagnosis, you kind of have to like do your own research and like kind of like almost like self-diagnose yourself, which is really bad because you should not do that ever. But like you kind of have to get to the point where you're like, you say to the doctor like, right, I've done my research, could it be this? Like I think maybe it could be this, I have all these symptoms, like what do you think? And it got to that point and they were like, yeah, it's definitely a possibility that it could be that. So once they had said that, like, right, yeah, it might be that, then all the testing begins. And when I tell you, it is not a nice like testing period to get diagnosed for endometriosis. It was so difficult. And I know so many women that I see with endometriosis that say like they had a similar experience. It took a very long time for me. And well, the thing is, I say it took a long time. When you count like when I actually should have been diagnosed, which is when I got my period and it wasn't regular, then it was years and years and years. But the actual like all the testing I had done, I would say was over about a year, maybe a year and a half. And so the first thing that they do, I think the very first thing they did was just like a pelvic exam, basically like a smear test. They actually did a smear test as well and like just checked obviously that all the cells were okay, and then they do like a pelvic exam and like have a look. Not a nice experience, but it's just something that, you know, you get used to. And a smear test as well is like, it's over within seconds. Like the actual smear test bit is fine. It's when you have a pelvic exam because they have to like thoroughly look, and that wasn't very pleasant, but again, like it wasn't bad. So that was the first thing. They just literally have a look if there's anything unusual. They mainly at that point wanted to see like why I was bleeding so much. Again, nothing showed up on that because I probably should have led with that. That endometriosis 9 times out of 10 doesn't show up until you have surgery, basically. Like it just can't show up in anything else. Like very rarely is what I was told anyway. But they still have to do all this testing because they can't just start with the surgery. That's what I was told. So I had the pelvic exam, and then obviously between all these things you have to wait weeks and weeks because obviously the backlog of the NHS, and obviously it's crazy at the moment. And this, by the way, this was in 2020 and 2021 that I was going through like all this testing and everything. So I had that, and then I think the next thing I had was an ultrasound. I had an internal ultrasound. I think it's called like transvaginal ultrasound. Out of all the things for testing, I would say me personally found this the most unpleasant, like, which is so random because I do have surgery as well, I'll get to that, but you'd think I would find the surgery like the worst, but actually I found this the worst. I don't know what it was, it just was not comfortable. But again, not as bad as like you'd make it out to be in your head. It just was like, I would say the most uncomfortable out of all of them. It's basically where they have like a camera, and you can imagine, and yeah, they just basically can try and have a look. Sometimes, like very rarely, this can show up endometriosis, but like most of the time it doesn't. So with mine, again, it didn't, and they said like, no, we can't see anything. So at that point they were like, we need to actually refer you to like a specialist gynecologist, which I think the waiting list was literally like over a year at this point. All the line's gone really weird. Why has it done that? At this point I was like in agony, like, oh my god, this line's really blue. Yeah, at this point I was in agony. Like it was getting to the point where I just could not function. Like even just like walking was a struggle for me at this point. Like I was so out of breath from just walking. I just could not live my day. Like I have an office job, bear in mind as well, so most of the time I'm sat down, and I was just exhausted. Like the exhaustion was just next level, and I was not in a good place. Like it was starting to really affect me mentally. I couldn't fit any clothes because my body was just so different. I was so bloated that I was basically having to wear like maternity clothes when I did wear things. I just didn't fit in anything. So obviously that mentally wasn't great because it would come out of nowhere. And physically I just was not comfortable and was not in a good place. So at this point I looked into like how much it would cost just to have like a consultation with a gynecologist if I was to pay for that myself, knowing I definitely wouldn't be able to pay for the surgery myself because that is like thousands of pounds. But I thought like if I pay to just go and see a specialist gynecologist, they could then like say, yeah, we're happy to do a surgery, refer me back to the NHS, and at least it's kind of like cut out some of that time. So that is what I did, which I'm very grateful that I had sources to be able to like pay for a doctor's appointment, because I am very aware that a lot of people do not have that option, and it's just soul destroying having to wait that long. Like it's frustrating having to wait like even like a couple of weeks when you're in that much pain, but like months and months, like years, is just next level. So yeah, I'm really, really lucky that I was able to do that. So yeah, that was the next step for me, was actually paying to see a gynecologist who didn't even really need to look at me. They didn't do any tests. They just literally, from what I was saying and how I was like acting and everything, they were just like, yeah, that is most likely what it is. It's actually a man as well that I saw, and why is the lighting gone blue again? Yeah, it was actually a man who I went to see, and he was actually really, really helpful. Like straight away he was like, he just like valued my, like, what's the word, like the way I was feeling. He made me feel valued, because that is the sad reality of having endometriosis, is you, because it's invisible, is you do feel like you're making it up. Like people make you seem like you're making it up, and you just feel like you just don't feel valued. And straight away he made me feel valued. Like the way I was feeling, he was like, yeah, that is normal, that is common of endometriosis, like you shouldn't have to feel like this. He was like, I can clearly see that it's affecting your quality of life. He was like, you have no quality of life right now, do you? And I was like, no, I literally can't leave the house. So yeah, he basically said, I'm gonna write a letter back to your GP and tell them I want to do the surgery. And I was like, oh god, like I can't afford for you to do the surgery, like I can't afford for that. I looked at how much it would be, and it was literally like thousands of pounds. I was like, I can't afford that. And he was like, no, the NHS will still pay for it, you just wait the waiting list, like, which I think was actually a bit shorter because he managed to squeeze me in, and he would do the surgery. So I was still getting it on the NHS, but just basically the NHS were handing me over to this doctor. After that, I was actually feeling really, really positive, even though from the start I just knew I did not want to have the surgery. I just realised I skipped out a massive bit. About a year prior to that, I also had the an IUD Mirena coil fitted, because again they clearly saw that the birth control of pills wasn't working for me, and they were like, maybe the coil will, because it's more like localized. Because obviously when you take a birth control pill, you take it into your like mouth, obviously you take it here, and it goes through like your whole body kind of thing, spreading the hormones, whereas an IUD is fitted in the place, like in the region that actually needs the hormone, if that makes sense. So it's more localized. It can basically means that it's less likely to cause other issues, like other side effects. So I had that for a year, which like as a birth control I got on really well with, but it just didn't do anything for my endometriosis. Like it made me feel no different. So yeah, anyway, that's obviously why I went back. I had to wait, I think it was at least 6 months to be on the coil to make sure it definitely wasn't helping before I went and saw a gynecologist. So yeah, sorry, that was a little bit confusing. But then yeah, with the surgery, like I said from the start, like I definitely don't want the surgery. Like I'm someone that is petrified of anaesthetic. I'm someone that's scared to fall asleep. I hate the idea of being unconscious. It really frightens me. And so I said from the start, like, there's no way I can have surgery. Absolutely no way, because obviously you're under general anaesthetic and be completely unconscious, obviously, for them to do the surgery. And yeah, I just never ever thought I'd be brave enough to do it. But it got to the point where I was in so much pain, and like I said, I had no quality of life, and I just had to have it. So the surgery it's called a laparoscopy surgery. It's a keyhole surgery, so it's not like a massive surgery, which is good. It's like not too invasive. It's basically where with me they did 3 holes. I've seen slightly different with different people, but they basically have to have like 2 tools in, and then if they then have to remove stuff, they then do that. Because with a lot of people, is like they do this surgery just to have a look and see if they can find endometriosis, and then if they do, they obviously scrape it out, or they can scrape it out, or they can burn it out. I think with mine, I got them scraped out. You'd have to look into it, because I feel like there's pros and cons of both, but I didn't really get a choice, to be honest. That's just what they decided to do, which was fine because I didn't know anything about that at the time. But yeah, I basically had the surgery, and they said to me, like, if we find anything, we'll remove it, and hopefully you'll feel better afterwards. And they also was going to replace my coil and put a new coil in, just so it gives the new coil a chance to like fully like start. Because basically with like all the scar tissue that endometriosis leaves behind, it then like the coil can't like fight it quick enough, basically. Whereas once they'd scraped all the scar tissue out and then put a new coil in, it was kind of like starting fresh. So yeah, they did the surgery with me and basically found like a ridiculous amount of scar tissue. So yeah, basically all my organs in that region were like stuck together pretty much. Like my fallopian tube was stuck to my ovary. Like I might be getting this wrong, but like basically a lot of stuff was like stuck together because of how much like scar tissue I had basically in that region. Yeah, just everywhere in that region, my bowel, my bladder, everywhere was kind of like stuck to like I think it's my abdominal wall, like something like that. It was all stuck together and basically just completely blocked up with scar tissue, which explains why I was so bloated, why I was so tired. Yeah, it explains a lot. So basically, yeah, they scraped all that out, and yeah, that's what happened with the surgery. I'll talk about like my recovery and stuff from the surgery now. So I actually didn't feel awful after the surgery. Like, I was expecting to feel a lot worse than I did. Straight away I didn't feel anything because obviously I was on like morphine, and the anesthetic and stuff like was still kind of in my system. So like the hardest bit for me was this might be a bit gross, but like going for a wee afterwards, because they'd also done a I want to say cystoscopy. I don't know the right medical words, but they'd basically done another test during the surgery that like basically like tested my bladder, and what they had to do for that basically was like really, really painful. So I didn't feel it during the surgery, but as soon as I started to need a wee, oh my god, imagine when you have to wee and you've got a UTI and it feels like razor blades, but this literally felt like razor blades. Like, oh my god, it was so much worse, like so much worse than thrush and anything like that. It was so bad. But that only lasted for like a couple days, and then I would say that's definitely the worst part. Like, I was definitely very, very exhausted after the surgery, and like was struggling to walk quite a bit. And the thing is, they do say that it's kind of like after a C-section, they say like, don't bend over, don't pick anything heavy up, don't walk upstairs, like don't walk very far, like don't drive, anything like that, because it's the same area and obviously you could still like rip your stitches. I basically ended up having a few days on the sofa where I just literally sat still and I was just watching movies all day, and it was the most boring days of my life. Like, I was literally going insane, not doing anything. I'm not someone that can sit still. But yeah, after a few days of that, I was starting to feel a little bit better, so I started like increasing like my movement. I remember, I think by like day 4, day 5, I went upstairs, and I was like, I don't know if that's good or bad. But I would say in total, like the initial like it's kind of like outside recovery was only like a week or two, but internal, like there's a like you're kind of recovering for like a good few months afterwards. You just don't kind of realize, I guess. But yeah, I actually do think the surgery is the best thing I ever had. I wouldn't say it's like made me feel like loads and loads better, because there's no cure for it at the end of the day. So I knew it wasn't gonna like fix everything, but it's kind of like, it kind of just like helps things, like makes you feel a bit better. And yeah, it did make me feel a bit better. I would say when I think about me now, like the days I get that are really bad, there's a lot less days that are really bad compared to like it was like every single day. Now I would say it's like it's still every week, but it's like maybe a couple days in the week are bad. And I feel like it's actually getting better at the moment, like, which is so weird because I'm not really making any massive difference. I guess I'm eating a bit healthier and stuff lately, but I don't want to jinx it and be like, it's not that bad at the moment, because I do go through stages where like it isn't bad and then I have a massive flare up and it's awful. But yeah, it's different for everyone. Some people literally have the surgery and then they never need to have it again and they feel great. Other people have surgery and then the next year they need to have another one because it grows so quickly. Like, again, there's stages of endometriosis, but like the stage doesn't really determine like how painful, how much it affects your life, if that makes sense. So yeah, that is everything I need to say about the surgery, and I think that's everything I wanted to say. I just want to finish with some like little things that kind of helped me, because I just feel like that's like kind of like a positive way to end me. So if you're struggling with this, or you think that you might have this, then definitely speak to your GP as soon as you can. Or the first thing I would say recommend doing is create a diary. So like start noting down symptoms, when you get them, how often you get them, how bad the pain level is. Start doing all that first, so then when you go to your GP, because they're going to be the first things they ask you is like, tell me about your period, tell me about your cycle. If you then have a diary written of all your symptoms, how often you go for them, everything like that, then they basically can see straight away. So yeah, that's like the first thing I would recommend doing for like just general dealing with the pain. Obviously painkillers, I take a lot of painkillers. Like, that sounds bad, like I don't take a lot of painkillers, but I take them like a lot of days, like I just have to, because for me it's like if I didn't take them I would end up just having to be in bed all day, and I just can't live my life like that. Like, I have a job, I have a life that I want to live, and sometimes it's like taking that painkiller means that I can get on with my day, and yeah, then it just helps. So obviously just general over the counter painkillers help me. I have tried other like prescribed tablets in the past, but the thing I usually stick with is just ibuprofen, because that's like an anti-inflammatory thing. Other thing I would say that I've done that's definitely helped with like bloating and stuff is I just cut out alcohol. Like, I've just stopped drinking alcohol, because every time I would drink alcohol I would feel awful. I'd have a massive flare up of my endo, I'd be so bloated, and it just would not react well with me. So I've just cut out alcohol, and that is one of the things that they say, if you can cut it out, along with like caffeine, which I cannot cut out caffeine. I really do try to like limit my caffeine intake, but that's something I don't think I'll ever be able to fully cut out. And yeah, just like keeping in balanced diet. Obviously the same with every condition, like keeping a balanced diet is going to be good for you. But other things, obviously, is just things like hot water bottles. Hot water bottles do help me. I do actually have a TENS machine as well, which I got for Christmas, and honestly it's the best thing I've ever got. I can't believe, like, my mum got it for me for Christmas. I didn't even think to ask for it, and she just got it for me, and it was like the most thoughtful gift ever. So it's basically like a little pad, you stick it onto wherever it hurts. I personally get a lot of my endo pain down my right side, like where my ovaries are, which makes sense because when I had the surgery they did say that it was worse on my right side. So I kind of just like put the pad like that way, but like round sort of my ovaries kind of area. And then yeah, you just like you apply the TENS machine. Basically TENS machine is like, it sends like electrical currents. I don't understand exactly how it helps, but it does. Like, it's so good. Yeah, it's the best thing I've ever got for the pain. So I use that quite a lot, and that helps. And just general things, like obviously it goes without saying, like try and keep like your stress down, make time to like sit down, have, I find having baths sounds really bad, like not bad, sounds really like cliche, but honestly having a bath really helps me. And when I'm feeling like bad, that is the best thing for me. And also, again, kind of cliche, but it goes without saying, but like just like accepting that like you have this illness is like the biggest thing for me. And that's what it took me a really long time to get my head around, the fact that, right, I've got this illness for life now, that there's no cure. Try and find a way to live with it and live my life as best as I can, knowing that I am going to have restrictions. I can't do things that a normal 22, 23-year-old my age could do. And for me, that is the hardest, not the hardest, but it's one of the hardest things of it all, is like just learning to accept that and learning to like live as this new person. Because that is the thing, is like when I started going through like the worst of this a few years ago, it really made me like grow up like really quickly. Like I had to grow up very quickly. I had to leave like a lot of things behind. Like I used to be quite a sociable person, I used to go out quite a lot, and that's just not doable for me now. And that's just, accepting that is just the biggest thing for me. And to be honest, I'm okay, because I'm not that interested in stuff like that now, like going out. I'm very much a home person. I do love being at home. I'm fine with that anyway, but I can imagine that being really hard if you are someone that's like loves going out, loves doing all these things, then all of a sudden you like can't do them. It's like just learning a way to like accept that you've become a new person, and just learning a way to like enjoy that, and just, yeah, just accept that and be happy is like the biggest thing I would say to try and do. And that is so much easier said than done, because trust me, it took me a really long time. I feel like I'm only now starting to get to the point where I'm like, right, I'm okay with who I am and what my life is now. And don't get me wrong, I do still have days where I'm like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Like when I'm having a flare up, it does make me feel like really down, because I'm like, I should have more energy than this. I should not be tired. Like even now, like I said, I have an office job. I'm sat down most of the day, and yet by the end of it, I'm still like exhausted. And I just think to myself, like, what would I do if I didn't have an office job? Like I wouldn't be able to go and do like a really physical job. And it does make me like worry, because I'm like, what else can I do with my life? Like I can't do a job where I'm on my feet all the time, or anything like physically exhausting, because I'm already exhausted from just sitting down on an office job. So yeah, definitely know your limits, and just like cut yourself some slack. That's what I don't do enough. I need to cut myself some slack. But yeah, I think that's everything I want to say. It's probably gonna be a really long video, and I appreciate, obviously, like I said, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I do think it's probably quite interesting to hear someone else's story. I know that I would have loved to watch a video like this when I was like going through the period of time where I was like really confused and didn't know what was going on. I just feel like there's not enough like resources out there. It's very much an underfunded topic, and like a lot of doctors don't even know about it. I feel like I've seen people talk about how like they suggested to the doctor there could be that, and they were like, what's that? Which is so bad. But like, yeah, it's definitely underfunded. And considering, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's the same statistic as like diabetes, like 1 in 10. And yeah, obviously you hear a lot about diabetes. You hear, I'm not saying that there's a cure for things like that, but as in like, I don't know, you just hear a lot more about stuff like that than you do about endometriosis. And yeah, it does make you feel a bit deflated sometimes, because I do wonder, like, not to be like all sexist and stuff, but I do wonder if like it was a condition that men suffer with, like mainly men suffer with. Would there be a cure by now? Would there be more money? Like, would there be more research into it? I'll let you create your own opinion about that. But yeah, I just feel like I just ended on a bad note. But no, honestly, if anyone does want to message me, I'll put my Instagram down below, or you can comment on this video obviously if you want to, but I can understand people wanting to like keep things private. Honestly, this is really vulnerable of me. Like I was saying, damn, before I started filming this, I was like, I don't even know if this is like whether I should film this or not, but because it's just so personal, it's so vulnerable. But I'm glad I did, because even if it just like helps one person feel a little bit less confused, then it's a good thing at the end of the day. But yeah, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please do leave a like and subscribe. I'm so close to my end of March goal. I think I'm like 2 subscribers away from 700, which I really wanted to hit before the end of March. Hopefully I will, and then we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, which just blows my mind, and I really do hope that I hit it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye.